Hello, my name is Shannon Lem, and I'm the Executive Director of the Frontenac Arch Biosphere Network. I'm joined by my colleague Christine Grossutti, our Conservation Project Manager, to provide a short presentation about the Frontenac Arch Biosphere region and its ecological significance. We've seen a recent increase in attention and concern for the Frontenac Arch Biosphere region as a result of Aalto's high-speed rail proposal, which we are aware of and actively participating in the public consultations for. We hope that the information in this presentation helps to better educate and inform those of you who wish to support biodiversity and ecological connectivity in the Frontenac Arch Biosphere, or FAB, region and beyond.
We'll be providing a brief overview of the FAB region, the UNESCO designation, our role as administrators of the designation, the ecological significance of the region, and how it relates to the proposed high-speed rail routes. And lastly, how our communities can support ecological connectivity here.
One of the most common questions we get about the Frontenac Arch Biosphere region is where is it and what are its boundaries? So we've created several maps in order to help situate the UNESCO designated region in the larger context, which I'll walk through. And then Christine will share even more detailed maps of the landscape, some of which include the proposed high-speed rail routes. The boundaries of the UNESCO Biosphere region are along the St. Lawrence River between Brockville and just west of Gananoque, then northwest to Verona, north to the Westport area, over to Athens, and back down to Brockville. An essential part of the UNESCO Biosphere designation is the presence of core protected areas, shown in darker green, and buffer areas, shown in lighter green. The core protected areas of the FAB region include Frontenac and Charleston Lake Provincial Parks, Queen's University Biological Station, and the Thousand Islands National Park. UNESCO Biosphere Reserves, as they're referred to internationally, or regions here in Canada, are ecologically significant areas that have been nominated by a community or a national government to the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO. Biosphere regions are intended to be learning places for sustainable development and test and model approaches that balance social and ecological systems. There are no restrictions or limitations put on areas because of the UNESCO designation. It's really just meant to identify and communicate how unique and special these places are and to encourage sustainability within them.
Around 80,000 people live within this biosphere region, which overlaps with 2 counties and 9 villages, towns, and townships. It supports vibrant tourism and agricultural economies, and about 12% of the land is legally protected by parks, land trusts, and other organizations. Boundaries also intersect with the overlapping territories of the Algonquin and Kanien'kehá:ka, or Mohawk people of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy.
The Frontenac Arch Biosphere Network, or FABN, is a not-for-profit organization that administers the region's UNESCO designation. We're a small team of staff, volunteer board members, and a broad network of organizations and local communities working together to promote the resiliency of the region by sharing information, knowledge, and best practices. FABN does not own or manage any land directly, but we collaborate on initiatives with our network of partners, which include land trust, conservation authorities, municipalities, and community groups. Part of the mandate of UNESCO Biosphere regions is to support and conserve biodiversity. So an important part of our work is related to ecological connectivity. Ecological connectivity is the flow of natural processes such as pollination, seed dispersal, water movement, and animal migration. It is the unimpeded movement of species that is essential for their long-term survival because it allows them to access food, water, breeding and wintering areas, adapt to climate change and other human disturbances, and maintain genetic diversity through gene flow. The Frontenac Arch is an important ecological connection within the continental Eastern Wildway. If we focus in on the circled area of this map, which shows potential habitat connections between the southern United States and eastern Canada, we can see that there are only 2 or 3 potential paths across the St. Lawrence River, and the only one in Ontario is the Frontenac Arch. The ability for wildlife to move freely at this pinch point is a critical part of ecological connectivity and essential to species' ability to adapt to a changing climate and other human disturbances. The larger area shown in the orange outline on this map is called the Algonquin to Adirondack, or A to A corridor. We work closely with the A to A collaborative on building awareness and connectivity between these areas. The Frontenac Arch is a slender thread of Precambrian rock within the A to A corridor that creates the conditions for one of the last intact north-south forest corridors in eastern North America. It serves many species, especially forest obligate birds and wide-ranging mammals. This north-south corridor intersects with a transition zone between the Ontario Shield and Mixedwood Plain ecozones, creating an area of ecological overlap between species at the edge of their ranges. This map is a model from our Ecological Corridors project. This convergence of corridors, forest types, and ecosystems is what makes the Frontenac Arch one of the most biologically rich places in Canada. This region is extremely unique and special. The rich southern-influenced forests here support a high diversity of reptiles, amphibians, and birds, including 54 designated species at risk of extinction. For example, the Frontenac Arch is home to the only known Ontario population of the pitch pine tree, which is considered rare in Canada. This tree can grow in dry and rocky barren soils, providing food for wildlife in otherwise scarce areas. This region is also home to one of only 2 Ontario populations of the gray rat snake, Canada's largest snake. The Frontenac Arch also contains the largest Ontario breeding area for the cerulean warbler. This bird requires relatively large sections of mature forest and is threatened by habitat loss and forest fragmentation. The cerulean warbler is considered an umbrella species because when we protect the large blocks of forest it needs to survive and reproduce, many other species benefit. This bird can help us understand why maintaining ecological connectivity is so essential and how transportation networks and other development projects can impact ecosystems.
So ecological connectivity is vital to biodiversity conservation because we know that isolated ecosystems degrade and isolated populations decline and become extinct. Globally, species extinction rates are 10 to 100 times higher than any time previously recorded and are accelerating as our human footprint expands. This diagram, adapted from an image created by the National Capital Commission, shows the impact of habitat fragmentation on the species composition of an ecosystem. Habitat fragmentation is the process by which large continuous area of habitat is divided into smaller isolated patches, often separated by a matrix of unsuitable environments, such as roads, industrial farmland, or urban development. This phenomenon is considered one of the greatest threats to global biodiversity because it reduces the total amount of available space for wildlife. It reduces the amount of interior habitat which certain species require, and because it changes the configuration of the remaining habitat, making it harder for certain species to survive and move across the landscape. FAB-N, like many of you, is aware of the proposed high-speed rail routes between Toronto and Quebec City. This is a project being coordinated by Alto, who's the project authority leading its development and the public consultation on behalf of the Government of Canada. We're actively taking part in Alto's consultation process, and we encourage others to do so as well. This map shows the FAB region boundaries and an approximation of the proposed high-speed rail study area in light blue. You'll see that the potential southern route cuts through the UNESCO designated region, while the northern route falls outside the formal UNESCO designated boundaries. It also crosses through the larger Algonquin to Adirondack Ecological Corridor, which is represented by the orange lines and habitat nodes. And I'll explain these in a few slides. The A to A landscape is critically important for wildlife movement and biodiversity at a continental scale. The next few slides include additional maps that show how the southern portion of the high-speed rail study area overlap with areas of ecological significance. And we're focusing on this area because it's within the UNESCO designated region. It's important to note before we look at the more detailed maps that we've recreated the proposed high-speed rail study area in these maps because we don't have access to the original data. So there'll be some small inaccuracies in the blue study area shape. So this map shows the land cover of the Frontenac Arch, and you can see it is a patchwork of human settlements and infrastructure in red, agriculture and grassland habitat in yellow, and forest, wetland, and aquatic habitat in greens and blues. The greens of the forested area show a very large existing block of forest in South Frontenac Township. These areas provide important habitat for species at risk. For example, this is where 50% of the national population of the cerulean warbler comes to breed. This habitat is increasingly threatened by unsustainable human activities, invasive species, climate change, and pollution. So this large forested area in South Frontenac has been designated the Frontenac Forest Key Biodiversity Area, or KBA. It is one of 4 KBAs that overlap with the Frontenac Arch. KBAs scientifically identified areas that are critical to the survival of species at risk because they sustain the species and ecosystems that are threatened, rare, or restricted, because they're key to the ecological integrity of broader ecosystems, because they contain sites of migration, breeding, or hibernation, and they are considered irreplaceable. The light blue area shows the approximate study areas for the proposed high-speed rail line, and the proposed southern route overlaps with 2 key biodiversity areas and interrupts connectivity between them. These areas are essential for species at risk, such as the Blanding's turtle, pitch pine, gray rat snake, cerulean warbler, and the eastern loggerhead shrike. Because this region is so critical for conserving biodiversity, many agencies prioritize land protection here. And you can see from this map that there are many protected and conserved areas in the purple hatch in the FAB region and within Alto's southern study area. The federal government tracks protected and conserved areas in a national database, which is where the purple mapping data was pulled from. To be included in this database, conservation measures must meet a high bar by demonstrating long-term protection, effective management, and documented benefits for biodiversity. Approximately 12% of the Frontenac Arch is protected. This map zooms in on Alto's study area, in the blue shaded area, just where it overlaps with the biosphere region, especially that Frontenac Forest Key Biodiversity Area. And it shows in the hatched areas the different conservation agencies that own the land. So you can see that while the study area narrowly avoids the Frontenac Provincial Park, which is in red here, there are still multiple other protected and conserved areas within the study area. At least 9 conservation organizations protect land within the area, including the Rideau Canal World Heritage Site in blue, managed by Parks Canada, the Queen's University Biological Station in green here, the Nature Conservancy of Canada in orange, and the Cataraqui Conservation in purple. FAB recently completed a participatory mapping project that included scientific models, local expertise, and Indigenous knowledge to identify wildlife corridors that are providing connectivity throughout the biosphere region. This interactive map and more information is available on our Ecological Corridors project page of our website, which you can most easily find by web searching Frontenac Arch Ecological Corridors project. The yellow pathways represent the areas required to accommodate wildlife movement, which is essential for the survival of multiple species groups and their ability to adapt to climate change and other human disturbances. The computer models have been created for the entire Algonquin to Adirondack corridor, shown in the orange lines here. These are the paths that, based on land cover and topography, animals are most likely to use as pathways as they move between larger blocks or nodes of intact habitat. North of the Frontenac Arch, these have yet to be refined with local knowledge and expertise, but you can see that the Alto study area intersects with multiple corridors on both the southern and northern arms. This mapping work is intended to inform decision-making so that ecological connectivity can be meaningfully considered and prioritized in development projects.
So in conclusion, the FAB region is an ecologically significant area worth protecting. Maintaining ecological connectivity is essential for conserving biodiversity and the resilience of our ecosystems on which we all depend. We are faced with many interconnected environmental crises, including climate change and unprecedented rates of species loss, both of which, of course, are connected to our need for more sustainable transportation options. But as we formulate solutions to these issues, it's important that we do not create more problems as we attempt to solve others. We hope this information has been helpful. There is more about our organization and our work and the UNESCO designation on our website. We also share a seasonal newsletter, which you can subscribe to from our website. And of course, you can follow us on social media for more updates related to the proposed high-speed rail. And you can also contact us at info@fabn.ca if you have questions. It's our hope that ecological connectivity, species at risk of extinction, Indigenous perspectives, and credible environmental science are meaningfully integrated into all planning processes, and that communities within the FAB region are well informed and engaged in these important issues. So thank you, miigwech, nawe, and merci for listening and helping protect, conserve, and restore the rich biodiversity of the Frontenac Arch Biosphere region.